Hello and welcome to Poems On. I'm Al Basile. This is the 10th show of the second season. Our theme for the second time is learning. And I have as guests returning for a new conversation, David Mason and Callie Conan-Davies. Welcome and lovely to see you two.
Hey, it's great to see you, Al.
It is really great to be here. And Al, it was so much fun the last time. Looking forward to this.
Yes. I don't recall which one of you I asked to read first when we did this a year or more ago. But I think I'm going to ask Chrissy, you to go first, and then Dave will follow you, and I will bring up the rear. So take it away.
Okay, we're going to try screen sharing while we do this.
Great.
So this first poem is called Learning Ukulele. And I'm going to just launch straight and not say anything, just launch straight into it because it says a lot about what I think about learning. So here it goes. Learning ukulele. Long as the latitude I allow love, my one and only daughter sings along the downstroke of her thumb strum, her head nodding to the ukulele neck. I keep mum as mothers learn they must, who listen on the other side of window glass. My other ear to the bush beyond, where the murder birds are bound to turn in their coffin dreams. Didn't all the angels weep when a single angel wept, wiping out the difference? I make believe I could kiss all the tears from all their baby faces, crooning, "Nothing is amiss, nothing amiss," when the sweetest little bird voice breaks from the minor chord she bumbled, is how it dawns on me. There is no right way to do this.
Thank you.
I noticed that I'm jiggling the table when I laugh, so it makes the computer bounce up and down. I've got to watch out.
The thing about all the angels weeping when one angel weeps is an image that I hadn't encountered before. But the next line is what really gets me. So that makes up for the idea that an angel is weeping is canceled out when they all weep in concert.
They're all weeping together. I mean, there's a lot of weeping in this world. It's a weeping world. So
the world's more full of weeping than we can understand.
There we go. The world's more full of, thank you, Davey. But yeah, it is. And so what? I mean, this is the thing. This is about motherhood, and I'm in this for the second go around now, not as a mother, but as a grandmother. I'm 4 months into my first experience of grandmotherhood. So the Greeks call the grandmother, the grandchild, the second child, your second child, something like that. They've got a but it's like having two now. But it's strange because you're watching your own daughter with a daughter, and it's just incredible. But this is about watching somebody else learn when you know that you can't do anything. Once all the things you can do for them, which is feed them and change their nappies and keep them clean and stop them from falling into the dam, all the thousand ways they can kill themselves once they can walk. Once that's done and they're gone, there is nothing you can do. You can't save them from all the weeping this world holds. You just can't.
Yes.
There's no way of preparing for that. No one can prepare you for a broken heart from when your heart gets broken the first time and you think you're going to die, and every single death experience that comes after that. No one can prepare you for being a mother, for giving birth. There's no amount of book reading or anything that can prepare you for that. In fact, I was reminded when I knew that we were going to talk about what we're talking about today about what did Oscar Wilde say? Education is an admirable thing, but it is well to remember from time to time that nothing that is worth knowing can be taught.
Yes.
Nothing that is worth knowing can be taught.
Yes.
What's worth
Yes.
knowing? Well, love, I would argue, is what's worth knowing, but you can't teach it, and you can't teach anyone how to handle it when your heart gets broken, or all those things. So as a mother, the hardest thing is knowing I can't teach you anything. I can't help you when you're going to need it most. And it's also the trust that in making mistakes, when she bumbles a minor chord, in making the mistakes, that's how you're going to learn. And I had to simply, as it says in the poem, keep mum. That is, keep quiet. The hands-offness to the learning from the learning person, which is one of the important things to learn as a teacher, is when you just got to hands off and be silent.
Yes. Yeah, and you say that very early on in the poem, that you learn that you need to keep mum when that discovery is being made by someone else. I'm with you. I was paid to teach for many, many years, but I never claimed that I taught anybody anything. If anything, I tried to create a situation where people could find their own way. But actually, I've written a song with the same impulse about teaching adolescent girls and being at the point where you know exactly what mistake they're about to make and you need to hold your tongue. The song is called Bite My Tongue.
Fantastic.
Yeah, well, that's right. I mean, the worst thing you can do, I was thinking to adolescent girls, but to anyone really, have you noticed, don't give advice. People hate being given advice. It's just anyone at any stage in life. It's not giving advice you should hesitate about. People don't take it well.
Well, particularly if it's unbidden. But,
yes, that's right. But it's really weird because when you've got experience and a certain amount of really hard-earned insight into something about life, it's really weird that what you do is actually sit on it, because that's the very that you can't teach anyone, and they don't want to know anyway. So it's really weird. You've just got to be quiet.
Yeah, well, that's part of the wisdom.
Yeah.
I just want to point out a few aspects of the verbal texture of this poem, because some of your listeners will be hearing it for the first time. To me, one of the remarkable things about the poem that makes it maybe dawn on a reader more slowly than other poems is that the bulk of the poem is in a sort of parenthesis. So the sentence, long as the latitude I allow love, is how it dawns on me there's no right way to do this. And what happens inside that dawning is this whole realm of experience, including the daughter practicing the ukulele, including, the angels weeping, including that little line, nothing is amiss, nothing amiss. And that miss, the feminine aspect of the miss, and how mum rhymes with bumbled. To be a mum is to bumble, and to be
and to be mum.
Grandfather is to bumble, right?
We're just all bumbling.
We're bumbling all the time.
We're mistake-making bumblers. What we are as humans.
We're living with a 4-month-old baby, and sometimes we have no idea why she's crying, and we'll bumble around for a solution. But anyway, the poem has that verbal texture as well that's just alive to all the ambiguities of that problem.
You can see some of it on the page. The central part of the poem that you refer to is between the dashes. And so you can see that. But it's great that we get to hear you read it as well, because we don't see a dash, but we hear it when you read.
That's great, Al.
Well, wonderful. Great way to get us started.
Oh, is Davey going next?
I'm going
Dave,
next.
Please go next.
And I'm going to a very short personal poem that's absolutely true. I'm somebody who really loved his parents, although his parents were really problematic people. And this is a lovely little moment that actually happened with my father when I was a kid. My father left the family when I was quite young, and this is one of his visits when we're going sailing together. It's called Windward. We were rigging sails. I paused at the mast, letting my little brother clip the jib, then took my turn and raised the main. And that was when my father looked at me and said, "You're really a patient fellow, aren't you?" We shoved off. I held the bellying main, sheeting the breeze as we heeled up and pointed. Ours hung over the side to balance sun and wind, water and humming hull. All day, patient because my father called me so.
Mm,
I love that.
mm. Yeah, I love that too. And I have to say, I'm not a sailing person by any stretch of the imagination. And my general knowledge of the terms that you're using and the actions that you're taking is probably barely enough to follow it. But that doesn't affect the way that you set up the moment of insight that we get into the nature of the sun at the end of the poem. It's virtually uh, shock proof in terms of you don't need to have maritime experience to understand what's really going on here and why the end of the poem is the way that it is. It's a great thing. And the other dimension of it, which you don't comment on, and it is a short poem, is the generosity of spirit, which the older brother takes without comment towards the younger brother.
Yeah,
So
true.
there's a lot here telescoped into a very few lines about a very straightforward, concrete action. But it's the relationships that chart the progress of it. So it's a wonderful poem. You know, I'm frequently in the position of trying to explain my idea of intelligence because I don't like to talk about intelligence. I like to talk about states of awareness because I think that it's the nature of consciousness that we've inherited that makes us different from the animals, that consciousness itself is a capability for awareness. But we have many capabilities for many levels and states of awareness. And one of the things that a lot of poems can do within their own bodies is carry a very specific state of awareness into the experience of the reader. And both your beginning poems in this sequence do that really, really effectively. And I think that's really what we're all about, you know, is what we're aware of and what we're not aware of, and how our life goes on with the things we're aware of and in spite of what we're not. So great, I like it. I wish, and I noticed this when I was reading your poems, that so many of them are first person and they're about the learning of the speaker. And whereas mine are, many of them are really third person oriented about how someone else learned somewhere in my presence.
Yeah.
But this first one that I'm going to read is in the first person, and it shows the peculiarity of mind that I had as a child. And unlike you, Dave, I am an only child. So I didn't have the opportunity to either victimize or be generous to my siblings.
Yeah. It's mostly
As we know.
victimization.
Well, as we know, this does happen on both sides, but I had a lot of time to work things out for myself. So this is a poem, a short one called How I Learned About Aging. And it's one of about a dozen poems I have so far that are titled How I Learned About This or That. And this one is the shortest of the bunch, How I Learned About Aging. I used to like to hollow out a pepper, raw, green, and glossy, fill it to the brim with orange juice, and drink, and bite a ring around the rim, and drink, and bite again, until both drink and glass were gone and no cleanup was necessary. I was just a kid, but I'd finesse the question of the glass half full or empty. Up until I drained the last drop, it was always full.
Al,
It's fantastic.
that is so great. I love that poem.
Yeah.
That is so clever of you to work that out. That is really good.
It's a great metaphor.
It is. It really is. And as you
Thank
read
you.
it, you know what? As you're reading that poem, as you're describing each thing, you're actually doing it. I mean, I found myself really feeling like I was doing it. I was biting down, and there it was, still full to the brim. Slurp, bite, slurp, bite. It's just gorgeous.
And there's less and less of it there. I mean, talk about a great metaphor for life as you age.
The less and less, it's just more and more. It's still brim full. It's still brim full. It's just incredible.
Well, thank you very much for your reactions. I have to say that it works as a poem, but it's what I actually did when I was 9 years old.
That's fantastic.
I'm going to try that someday. I've never tried that.
I know, it makes you want to try it, doesn't it? It makes me want to. I thought, I'm going to do that next time I'm cutting up a capsicum.
But I also wanted, just with Chrissy's poem, talking about the texture of language in the poem, I just want to point out that this is a kind of eloquence that goes back to Homer. That if the metaphor is essentially poetic, all you have to do is give us the metaphor. You don't have to do anything fancy with language.
No.
The language can be simple and clear and lucid, and the metaphor will just ramify and reify and expand.
It goes on for it ripples on, doesn't it?
Well, thank you. I love metaphor, and I wish I had more of these things that I did as a kid that turned out to be in some weird way prescient. But at the time, I just did it for something to do because I had a lot of time on my hands. I guess, I suppose.
But I think that's such an interesting just prompt for a poem too, Al, is to say, right now, I'm going to write a poem about how I learned about whatever, this or that, and then just scrub that. But that becomes the prompt. Because really, so many poems are about how we learned about something.
Yeah, and in the list of the ones that I have, some of them are real vignettes about us. And again, coming back to my idea about states of awareness, it might just be a simple vignette that shows on a small awareness that came to me as a child because somebody gave me a coin, looked in his hand of coins and picked a coin to hand. I have a poem about that called How I Learned the Value of Money. But others of them are very long, serious narratives about how some really deep lesson was pounded into me.
Well,
it's a good prompt, and it covers all layers of learning possibilities.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I recommend it.
Yeah.
This is great. Okay, well, let's go to and try it with it's got to be a green pepper, and you got to. Don't be careful who you allow to watch you doing this.
You want to talk about this poem before?
I know I'm going to try it over the kitchen sink just to start off with. Just.
Well, you can do it before each other, but yes, you're next. So go ahead and talk about what you're going to read next, please.
No, this is all tying in with everything else. I mean, these both the ones that you and Davey gave about how just these small things can ramify for the rest of your life. This is a small thing, but that metaphor holds true forever. That's timeless in your poem. For Davies, the long-lasting and profound ramifications of a simple, kind word. from a father.
Yes.
That lasts
Yes.
a lifetime. These
Yeah.
lessons can be, as you said, either pounded in over and over again. We have to learn and learn and relearn like a jackhammer, you know, breaking through the hard cores of consciousness and layers of ego. Bang, bang. But the other way is
Sometimes
just,
it's the other way.
exactly.
Yes.
It's the other
Yes.
way. Just one light touch and you are changed forever, and your life, you take that with you forever. And this was one
Yeah.
experience I had in New York. It was my
great.
my first time in
Yes,
New York.
about the chess players. Take it
Yes.
away, please.
Yeah, this is called a game of chess, and of course, obviously, I'm not American or New Yorker, so going to Washington Square Park, and I was alone. Davey had gone off to some meeting, as you know, being his poet speaker self, and I was left to run amok free in New York. for a day. So I just started walking from where we're living, and I found myself in, oh my God, Washington Square Park, you know, Henry James. Oh my God, I was like dying all over the place, and the arch as you go in, and the fountain and all that. And so this is about what happened to me that day.
Okay.
Can we go back?
Yeah, I didn't know you were going to preface it.
Yeah.
So.
A game of chess. In Washington Square Park, astonishing late October turns a yellow leaf as airily as spring. Everything slices up the light. The office towers, the bough above a woman cutting a man's hair by the finished roses. Water blazes from the fountain, and Bible quotes done in chalk are dust beneath the feet of the fiddler playing bluegrass for a few coins. It is so very hard to get close to anything. Over where the public chess tables stand in latticed shade, their concentration makes the players seem all of a piece, and the heart wants to sleep. But even here, a small upheaval. A black man, serious and soft, and a white boy, maybe 10 years old, pressed into his sharp collared shirt, engage in the abstract and the real. Here, I am given the space to see the boy let go his queen too soon. The look on his face. The man takes the queen away, and the empty square is an immensity the boy cannot move. Then the man succeeds in taking us all in when he puts her back, contrariwise, leans and smiles. Don't you be doing that again. And a boy grows in the light, and a man loses because he loves. And all the season does is throw down leaves and divvy up the sun above the chessmen on their checkered field.
This is so strong. I love this. It's so cinematic. It's so cinematic. I mean, the details are chosen with just magnificent aplomb. It's the sharp collar of the child. 3 words to describe the other player: serious and soft. You can't teach that. That's great. As a chess player, I will tell you that as much as all of the lines show very, very visually what's going on, and by the way, the repeated use of the slicing and the dividing of the light in the context of the squares, the lines of the chessboard, it's beautifully unified that way. But as a chess player, when the line where you say the boy what's the line? He
Let's
gives
go.
gives let's go the queen. When you're I don't know if you're a player, but when you're playing and you're thinking about your next move, it frequently happens that you will reach out and touch the piece that you want to move.
Yeah.
But you can take your finger off the piece and go back to your deliberations. But if you move it, you can't take it back. So let's go. What I see is, well, invariably you come down from above, and you grab the top of the piece with your with your fingers, and so it's like he goes down and then he lets go, and I see the fingers move away, and it's a beautiful thing. It's an image I hadn't thought of. I haven't played chess for 60 years, so thank you for evoking that in me.
No, that's great.
But
I mean,
but boy, what a wonderful this is a great little storm of a beautiful experience. And yeah, you got it. It's there.
the thing is, mostly when I write poems, they're not poems that I write. It's like an experience has happened, and I just let it sink down. It's, to me, it's like experiences, things that happen to us. They're like compost. They're like material that you put in the compost bin. That it all goes into the compost, and it just sinks down into this sort of rich, or like brewing a cup of tea, or like distillation. All the bones and the matter of the experience have just disappeared, and what you're left with, that I make a poem out of normally, is really the savor of an experience, the savor of it, not the actual facts of the experience. That's not the truth. The truth to me is the savor that you're left, that you're left when you've lived, when you've just let things break down and inside you, like reducing.
I love to see you do that, because some of the poems I'm going to read are kind of on the other side of that, where you get the narrative and you've got to draw.
This is one that actually happened.
This is why this one is unusual for me, because I'm not a narrative poet. This is exactly what happened. In fact, I had a notebook, all those things, and I was writing, and I thought, I can't think about what's happening to me. I'm just going to write down what I'm seeing. It was just a battered old little notebook this big, and I was just writing images. All that stuff is absolutely true.
Sure.
It was autumn and the yellow leaves. The office town, there was a woman cutting a man's hair. I couldn't believe everything. Where it is, Washington Square Park, there's like students everywhere. There was the fiddler playing. The fiddler was absolutely true. He was playing bluegrass, and all written in chalk was all these Bible quotes that someone had done before. There's just, and I was thinking, oh my God, in the water, there's a whole other activities going on in Washington Square Park with the fountain, and there's people, and it was a beautiful sunny autumn afternoon, perfect autumn in New York. And I'm thinking, and I'm writing all this down. So, and then I thought, how do you get a break from all this? I saw over in that corner, it was shady, and there were all these people just bent over tables. So I headed over there, and I walked straight into this moment.
Yes.
I walked straight up. I was standing by the black man, and he was playing with a little white boy. And even before what happened, I'm thinking, well, isn't this just America? Look at this. A big black man and a little white boy playing on sides, playing chess. And I thought, this is huge. But then this happened. And I'm thinking, oh my God. And I literally, when he said that, I thought, I've got to be when he said, he actually did that, he put it back, and he leaned, and there was about 20 people standing around this table with me, because now everybody knew something special was going on. Somebody was, some lesson was, it was in the air. Some lesson was going to be taught here. And when that man moved in, he put it back, and that smile on his face, I couldn't repeat it. I couldn't act it. And he leaned, and and those were his exact words. And I wrote it down before the breath even left his lips. I wrote down the exact words. He said, don't you be doing that again. I'm not going to put on a
Yes.
American accent crap, but that was his lingo. That's exactly what he said. Don't you be doing that again. Like, not
Yeah.
as a woman, with a smile. And the little boy just went like, and I just thought, oh my God, please, everybody in the world, please, this is it right here.
Yeah.
In terms of
Well, it's
human.
great that you recorded it. And sometimes the life is the art, and you didn't have to change anything.
I didn't have to let that
happened.
compost at all, is what I'm saying.
She didn't have to change the events or the images, but the thing I want people to be aware of about Chrissy's poetry, Callie's poetry, which makes it so distinctive, is that she's got an absolutely precise sense of the right word.
Yes.
Used in a given moment. And very often her words are chosen for etymological connections. And there are all sorts of ways in which they convey not only the scene, but the psychology of the scene. The man takes the queen away, and the empty square. Now we're going from the focused, the tiny little scene of this chess game to the whole of Washington Square Park, to the squares on the board, to all the empty square where the queen had been, and was taken away. All of those things simultaneously, and the empty square is an immensity the boy cannot move. I mean, I can't think of a living novelist who could write that scene better than it's written in this poem. It's just an astonishing piece of writing. And I want the world to notice that in these poems. The boy grows in the light and a man loses because he loves. Suddenly what we've got is older and younger, black and white. All of those distinctions almost evaporate because learning and love are happening. And so there's a visionary aspect to the poem. The poem just expands into that space quietly, and then just pulls back and leaves us with the chessmen on their checkered field. And there they are, all those sides, as it were, all that manipulation, all that moving, all that jockeying for power or position, all that stuff in the space of that, in Manhattan. This is happening. This beautiful, beautiful little moment. The poem doesn't sentimentalize it. The poem allows the difficulty of human interaction, politics, race, everything, age, everything, education, wealth, class. Is this a little rich boy? I mean, with the starched collar, he sure seems to be. Yeah. Who knows?
Yeah.
But all of that stuff is there on that checkered field. I just think it's a great, great poem.
Yeah, I agree with you. And the only thing that I would add is that the specific details that we get at the beginning, which create this profusion of activity, the overlapping of the imagery. I mean, literally the fiddler is standing on the chalked words. I mean, it's literal layering. And what that does is it creates a context of this profusion of activity that we know is humanity in New York, that it's a huge maelstrom of activity. I don't know what painter could have painted this as a tableau, but it would have been a very busy tableau. But then, because you've done that first, then when you go to the quiet grove, it just, you've created the setting literally for the jewel of the experience. So I agree with you, David. It's a great poem. And I take your point. Pardon?
Al, you've been to Washington Square Park, haven't you? Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
So, but what you say about the right word, the right word at the right time, it's such a rarity that we don't miss it until once in a while we see it, and then we go, oh, that's what it's supposed to be.
That word. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, all right, this is,
Yeah.
everything is here that needs to be here, and nothing is here that doesn't need to be here.
Yeah.
And that's what
Yeah.
we're all striving for. So
Yeah.
brava.
Thank you. But what's important
Lovely.
to me is, as far as learning goes in that one, is learning about losing, learning about loss, and what winning and losing really is, and making mistakes and losing, and how vital those experiences are for our lives, for our
Yep.
humanity, really.
Absolutely.
It's so important to me that we are given the opportunity to lose and to make mistakes. That's how we learn.
Yep.
That to me is a big part of how we learn.
So
For
my
sure.
next poem is about something
Failing.
that humbles me quite a bit. You know, I had traveled in India, South India, etc., and because it was so hot in January, I assumed I must be an equatorial country, but it's not. India is considerably north of the equator, and I just never bothered to look at a map, and so I never noticed it. And Chrissy, when I first met her, pointed out to me that I didn't even know where the equator was. And she, having grown up in the southern hemisphere, was quite aware of the location of things in the world. And Australians tend to be quite knowledgeable about the
Because
planet
we travel, because
they
Australians
travel.
all travel. Australians, Al, have got the highest rate of passport ownership in the world.
Yeah,
Really?
All Australia, yeah, and Americans have got the lowest.
yeah.
So all Australians know about the world because we all want to get there, because we don't think it's here where we are. It's out there somewhere.
Right.
And we get out
Sure.
there and realize,
Maybe it's back here.
where we were.
Yeah.
That's the Australian story, is going out and coming back home to realize what we've got. So anyway, we do know how the world looks.
So the poem I'm going to read is about learning, and it's about learning through my relationship with Chrissy / Callie. And I think that's why I fell in love with her. I think I fell in love with her because she is always learning, and I'm always learning when I'm in her field of influence. And it's an amazing thing. I think that's what
This
keeps
goes two ways.
it's what keeps a relationship strong. If you're always learning, if you're open to
Yes.
learning, you're always learning together. It's an amazing thing. So here's the poem called "Crossing the Line." Get to it. Crossing the line. She found the earth online and showed it to me, glowing on a screen and blue, the way I always thought I knew it. Crowded like so much thought with continents, different colored ink blots. Here are the steps. Here are the oil fields, the stains of poverty. You see, you never actually knew the line and never crossed it in your consciousness. She turned the world and showed me the equator, a line I'd never seen in my northern life. Now look, the earth is mostly water, like us. An Andean narrowing to the land of fire, and then Terra Australis, the southern land that Europeans took so long to find. And next, across the southern ocean where the albatrosses dream between the swells, unwritten whiteness shrinking toward the pole. She turned me upside down and brought me here to walk upright under the Southern Cross.
We really do become conscious when we become conscious if we're crossing the equator, that we're crossing the equator. And that line of yours is a great line, and you never crossed it in your consciousness.
That's right.
You know, you not only hadn't crossed it physically,
Yeah.
but you thought somehow you'd crossed it without ever having to be aware of crossing it. Comes back to my idea of levels or type states of awareness. And this
Yeah.
is, I mean, this is a great poem about transformation. And what strikes me particularly as we get to the end of it is that so close to the line about turning me upside down, you have walking upright. And it takes me back to the childhood fantasy that the people on the other side of the earth are all upside down. But then when
Yeah.
you get there, they're not. They're right side up, and they see you as upside down. And so what it does for me when I get to that last line of the poem is to show in really concrete physical terms how spiritually you've been reoriented. You're not upside down.
Yeah.
You're right
It's
side up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right, Al. There's
Yeah.
that real sensation there, isn't there?
Yeah.
You get
That's
the
what
real
it is.
sensation.
And we go with you through that flipping.
That's right. That's what the poem-
Other people might think I'm upside down, but I can guarantee you I'm right side up.
But what the other thing I love about, and it's there in the title, but you can read it through all the, is that although the line, you know, literally in the poem he's talking about that line, that imaginal line we call the equator, but that expression, crossing the line, is, I mean, don't you cross that line, or you've crossed that line, people would say, when you don't cross the line. I mean, that to me is another, like failure and making mistakes. The other essential part of learning to me is transgression.
Yeah.
If you haven't transgressed, if you haven't done the wrong thing, what other people are telling you the wrong thing, if you haven't been truly nonconformist or committed an act of total nonconformity and transgressed, you have never learned anything. Seriously.
So do you know? So you must know which of my poems I'm going to read next. Then
read it, Al.
Exactly. It's
Read
great.
it, Al.
I couldn't get a better segue. So
Yeah.
I've got to go to this.
Can I just say, I love every one of your poems. So give us this one, Al.
Well, this one. I mean, I didn't tell you what order I was going to read in, but this is about transgression and the freedom. I mean, the freeing of transgression.
Yeah.
A teaching moment, and this took place at Brown University in 1971, where I was in the graduate school teaching a fiction writing course to undergraduates, although I was myself only lately ascended from their miserable midst.
Okay.
At one point in that course, early in the course, somebody said, "Well, you're talking like you're the expert." I said, "Well, they're paying me to teach the course, so
Yeah.
you're paying to take it. I'm the closest thing to an expert in the room." Anyway,
I got away with it for 30 years.
yes. Well,
Oh, Al, read. I love this one. Go.
a teaching moment. When writing class was over, several of my earnest students lingered. Those who knew they really weren't doing all I wanted and wanted to, but couldn't find their way. When I tried to tell them, always was to dare some kind of greatness. Timid with their feelings, they supposed a navigation in roiling depths where they were barely wading. No point in putting it to them like that. Perceived insult would only blunt the message. They clustered round me as I walked outside, still asking questions. Followed down the green under the arch to Thayer Street. I stopped and pointed at the studio art building, converted from an old garage across the street. Long slated to be raised, its time had come. The dozers had already bitten deep into its far corner before lunch imposed a brief reprieve. Equipment sat untended, silent, shortly to resume. Before nightfall, the building would be down. We'll never have a better chance than this, I said, and led them puzzled to the site. Its southern wall a checkerboard of panes, rectangles set in metal frames, its glass a glint repeated in the light of noon. The structure, momentarily intact, cried out a teaching moment. I reached down and fetched up from the crushed stone underfoot a handful. Windows hardly 30 feet from where I stood could not be missed. The crash of breaking glass is like a crunching bell. And soon my students stood on either side and slung their stones as though each shattered pane rang out the end of class. We kept it up until no window in that wall was left unbroken. Giddy, satisfied, the students all went off grinning. I was smiling too. Although I'd never set foot in that building, I knew I'd seen a yearbook photograph. Someone had painted on an inside wall, "Caution is the enemy of art," from Motherwell, who added, "Everyone is more cautious than he thinks he is."
That's great.
I just love that. I laughed and laughed when I read that one. Al, I love that one. Good on you.
It was one of the, it was what a feeling.
I know.
It was a wonderful feeling. I mean, I would have done it if I been alone. But having 15, 20-year-olds with me was not to be missed.
Yeah, absolutely. That is so good.
The slow build of the details to that Motherwell quote is quite wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, I'm thinking about Frost, who says, on the one hand, what his neighbor says is good fences make good neighbors. And on the other hand, something there is that doesn't love a wall, that wants the wall to tumble and come down. Motherwell says, conformity is the enemy of the art, but caution is the enemy of art, but everybody is more cautious than they think they are. So that the psychology of being in that place where you think what caution is and what caution isn't is important. And after all, you're breaking glass, you're breaking the windows, but you're breaking the windows of a building that's going to come down anyway. So there's that degree to which the caution is removed, and the degree to which the caution is always there. That there's always that limit on it too. It's a really, really telling poem, psychologically a telling poem.
Yeah.
Well, I literally had said to them in class that we should be daring to achieve something great, even if it's a small thing.
Yeah.
And then I walk out of the building and boom, life opens the door.
I know, isn't that amazing?
It was literally
a teaching
10 minutes
moment.
after I had said this. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I call it a teaching moment. And of course,
that's right. It is. And but the great thing about is the great teachers are the ones who perceive that what the teaching moment is, that the teaching moment is there in front of them and grasp at it.
Well, you don't create it. You have to you have to realize, again, awareness. You got to be aware of it when it's in front of you.
Absolutely. That's exactly right.
Much of our lives are spent with our heads down, missing the things that are right in front of us. Yeah. So I was grateful that I picked up on that when that light went on, I saw it. So yeah.
I did. Yeah. See, that's the thing though, that I truly believe that, like, truth, the real truth that we know to be true, that's true about life, it's beyond our intellectual grasp. You can't grasp it intellectually. Truth is something
Right,
that you've got to
right.
feel. So that's why experiences like that you gave them, that will go deeper into their souls than just poring over books in the classroom.
Yeah, or anything I could have said.
Yeah, anything anyone
Yeah.
could say. That's right. But I do
Yeah.
think this is why poetry itself, teaching poetry, if it's done right, if because a poem can sit in front of many people's eyes and never break open. Really great teachers can break a poem open and show you the yolk inside that egg, the rich meat. But so many teachers of poetry are so not good at it, they can't break open a poem. So my true belief is sitting in front of us, like as you said before, right before our eyes, are poems everywhere, and those poems are bombs. If you know how to explode it, if you know how to take the pin out, for inexperienced readers, for young people, if you know how to take the pin out, blow up their faces, that's what we need. A poem is probably the most transgressive device that we have available to us. Because the great poems transgress. Potentially.
Yes.
The potential is
Potentially.
there.
Yeah.
The potential is
Yes.
there if you can crack it open.
Well, I think that's why people who teach,
yeah,
they live for moments like that, and you always remember it. If you're with one student and you're able to say something or show them something, and you see in her or his face the awareness come in, then you know, which it can't be gainsaid. I mean, you can't gainsay it. You see it, you know that you've done something. The other side of that coin is, because I work with adolescents for 25 years, and it goes back to what we were saying about the small thing that means so much to a child. If you say the wrong thing, you see the light go out, you see the face fall, and you feel. And it doesn't take much to say the wrong thing. It's a tremendous responsibility to be dealing with people, young people, in this the fragile state that they're in, as hard as they're trying to pretend that they're tough. And if you say the wrong thing, boy, it ruins your day.
And you can you can shut someone down.
So it's there. You realize you have power, and you live to try to use it well. Absolutely. And you live to avoid accidentally using it badly. So it was a great job. I love the job. I'm glad that I gave it a big part of my life. On the other hand, I have time now to do other things, but it was
It's an extraordinary privilege to be a teacher, to spend time of your life being a teacher. What you get from that joy when you see.
I mean, unfortunately,
you see
anything that's done really well is still rare, though. Unfortunately,
it is.
I wish every teacher was a great teacher. But
I know.
But we're not all great.
No. So really. Yes, so yay to transgression.
Yeah,
well done.
Yeah, I know you would like that part of this.
I did. I laughed when I read it too. I thought, yes. I mean, breaking things is one of the first great thrills of life. Breaking something is just as great as making something. I remember the first flood. I was about 3 years old when I smashed it. I wrote a poem, but it's one of the first poems I ever wrote, called Strife, which is about when I was about 3, smashing we were given this beautiful, delicate china dolls tea set to play with, and go outside and play with the tea set. And when all the grown-ups went inside, I just looked at this thing and held it in my hands. And the only thing I could imagine doing with this that would be play was to smash it. Like, what would this sound like? And I just smashed every piece, and the adults, and it was glorious. And the adults came running out and smashing sound, and I got like a belting, like, what have you done? I still can't understand what I did wrong. I knew I had to cop it, but I still didn't regret it a bit. The sound of something breaking is just
Yes.
creation to me. It's creation.
It's why we don't have much crockery in this house.
I see a whole bunch of shelves behind your head that belies that remark.
Yeah.
But
And
I don't know where I got the quote, but I have a poem in my first book called "Before we create, we must first destroy."
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that's right.
yeah, I mean they go together.
Yeah, they do.
It's hand in hand. I mean, they belong together.
Yeah. But so I think, but moving on, these are flowing on really well together, because staying in that learning environment, in the university, like college environment, my next poem is like about another experience in the class setting. And wow, this is just a massive experience of my life, probably one of the most shaping experiences of my life, of how my life went. It's one of my crossroad moments where you go like this and you go, well, that one's shut down and I'm going this way now. One of those moments. Anyway, I'll read the poem. It's called The Rule.
Please.
The Rule.
oh, hang on. I should put
David,
it up on the screen.
show
Do you want to tell readers where Thurul is?
Thurul is a small coastal village, a couple of hours south of Sydney, in Australia. It's a gorgeous little spot, beautiful coastline. Oh my God, just gorgeous. And it is where, when D.H. Lawrence came to Australia, Thurul is where he stayed. It's the place where he was only in Australia for a couple of weeks, and he wrote
for 99 days.
99 days. But he wrote his great novel, which is one of his greatest novels, I think, Kangaroo, in Thurul. Literally, he wrote that in 2 weeks. He wrote it sitting on the beach.
No, he wrote it in about 3 months. He was writing the whole time. But the first draft of it he got done just sitting on the beach. They rented a little house right on the beach in Thurul, and he would walk down onto the beach every day and sit with his exercise book and write. And he just wrote and wrote, and this what was to become his novel Kangaroo. So that's Thurul. But so it's got an epigram from Kangaroo. But the eastern sky was very beautiful, full of pure, pure light, the light of the southern seas. Next, the Antarctic. D.H. Lawrence, Kangaroo. I said it. Lawrence's words are beautiful. And an old hand closed the college door. The offending word, I learned, was beautiful. I left that day for good, to keep my word, and brought it home to you. But you turned queer inside, lashing a black and poisonous bud. Crush, you spat. Culture cringe, theorizing, crud. Those ugly days seem like a distant war. We lost ourselves in getting to this shore, where the land once smelled of honeysuckle, and men picked shells, black snails and sea coal. Your face looks out as his did, hard and clear and sea bitter. Now we stand where he knew one of his souls would stand forever. As you recite those lines from Kangaroo, they ring with the ocean's unexhausted roar. And when we kneel beside this tidal pool, fringed with Neptune's necklace and anemones, on a rock shelf jutting into the Pacific beyond Thurul, I see his hands, like ours, plunging in the new flowers. poem, Chrissy.
Would almost make me cry
Yeah, it's a great poem.
because it's such a profound part of my life. What I tried to tell in that poem, which was about talking about learning. When I was young, I came from a family that didn't value. It was just a childhood of, the details don't matter. It's just a childhood of total and profound neglect. And there was no one around me who read books or had ever been to university or anything like that. Nothing. It was just not valued, and I was just a neglected waif, really. But I just knew. I always knew that the way out of that circumstance, that milieu that I was in, the only way out was education. I just knew it. I have got to finish school. I've got to find a way to finish school without any help. And I've got to get to university because that's where the clever people are. That's where the why. And I thought wisdom lived there. I truly believed in wisdom, and that if I could get there, these wise people would teach me about life and how to live. And so, of course, I got there and I went there. And of course, oh my God.
You meet people who are afraid of wisdom and afraid of beauty, afraid of talking about beauty, afraid that if they talk about beauty, they'll be dismissed by their fellow professionals.
I got to uni, and it was all just beginning, where theory was starting to take over. Literary theory was starting to push out just literature, reading literature, which is all I wanted to do. But it was just theory, and unless you imposed a theoretical perspective on your reading, you weren't allowed to do it. And of course, all kinds of things were starting to be not allowed. And I remember this was when the event in this poem was a meeting I had with my supervisor, who was like the second leader of the English department at a huge Melbourne, one of the big Melbourne universities. And he was my supervisor for my PhD, because I was doing my thesis on Lawrence's travel books, his travel writings, which are just fabulous. And at that time, I was working on Twilight in Italy. Do you know his travel book called Twilight in Italy? And so I was having my monthly meeting with the supervisor. And so I just walked in, sat down. His room, his office was right across from the staff room, across the other side of the corridor. I didn't shut the door. We just came and sat down. So he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm working on Twilight in Italy." And I said, "Isn't that a beautiful title, Twilight in Italy?" And he did this weird thing. He stood up, he walked around the long table, the tutorial table, to the door, shut the door. And it came back, and I sort of looked at him queryingly, like, what did you do that for? And he said, "You're not allowed to use that word." And I thought, what word have I used? What, Italy? Is there something wrong with Italy? Or Twilight? Is Twilight got some kind of meaning I don't understand anymore? And he said, "No, beautiful." And Al, this really happened. This happened to me. This happened to me. I was about 26 at this stage, and something in my heart just,
You knew.
25 years to get here, and
Yes.
people who should have courage, who should be the wise ones. I'm about to cry. You have completely let me down. This is the biggest disappointment and disenchantment of my life, was the day I learned that there is no wisdom in the university, that it's not here. I'd come to a place believing it was the church, and it was just, it was, what's the word?
But the other thing is that the speaker in this poem is pinioned between the fear in the university, and I would say fear on university campuses is at an all-time high right now.
Yes,
maybe in the 1950s with the McCarthy era, fear was just as high as it is now. But she's pinioned between that cowardice on university campuses and the rage, the outrage of the man she goes home to,
Yeah.
who spits out his anger at that
Yeah.
culture. And the two, she's got to leave to keep her word
Keep my word.
in more ways than one,
Mm.
right? Um, and she can still see the beauty in that man when he kneels by the sea, looking a bit like D.H. Lawrence with his beard, etc. Seeing Lawrence's hands like their hands plunging in for flowers, because Lawrence wrote about flowers as beautifully as anybody has in the English language. She can, but she is now sort of cast away by those two positions.
Yeah. You just do realize you just got to find. You've got to find your own way.
You've got to get beyond the poles. You've now experienced the poles, and neither of them is where you're supposed to be. When you read the line, when you just come from your comment about beautiful, and when you said, I had to keep my word, my sense of it was you were keeping the word beautiful because no one else wanted you to have it. You needed to hang on to it because everyone else was telling you to throw it away. It's worthless.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's transformative, but within this poem, we don't quite know how you're going to get beyond it.
No.
But
you somehow just do. Time passes, and that's what happens. But often, the only way to get beyond something is to let time pass, because things do. It does. You know, I know it's a cliche to say it heals, and it doesn't make things go away, but it allows you to get beyond. It just to move beyond.
Other experiences intervene.
Yeah. But it's
and
like
you have something to look. You can look back on a recent memory that isn't that, which when you first clubbed senseless, you have no. I mean, that's your memory.
Yeah,
that's what you keep thinking of as you move forward. So living gives you something else that you can use to construct a future. Rollo May said, depression is the inability to imagine a future.
Yes.
And so, and this is what we need. We need to have the ability to create the future in our imagination. And the raw material of that is we need that in order to go forward. And when we're out of touch with that, when we cannot imagine something good coming in the future, then we're in despair. Yeah.
But you see, it's just a paradox, really, because the university, the experience that there were going back to Plato, there's two kinds of experience: the cataphatic and the apophatic. In mysticism, the apophatic is the affirming experience, the affirmative, and the apophatic is like the dark night of the soul, the unlearning, the breaking down. That cataphatic, apophatic is that one, the breaking down, the destructive experience. Cataphatic is the affirming one, and the apophatic in the mystical traditions, like the dark night of the soul, the depression, are the ones we learn from unlearning, from being broken down. And I realized that I was pursuing this cataphatic vision of affirming experience, and what I got instead, which proves now I can look back, is so much fuller and richer experience, was the destructive one I got from the university. And also the other thing that happens in the end of that poem is that where I go back to, and this has happened again and again in life, to learn, is nature.
Yeah.
That nature is the great teacher. Go back to nature. That's, I think, what the big circle of return for me has been, is just to come back to the first love, the true love, which is nature. Teacher, the great teacher is nature.
It is not your smartphone. Your smartphone won't teach you as much as nature does.
But the thing is, I love Davies' next poem about a really wonderful teacher. Can we hear Davies' one?
Please.
Take it away.
Another true story.
True story about my second grade teacher, Mrs. Vitt, who I think the
Oh,
condition
yes.
described at the end of the poem, I think she's got muscular dystrophy when you see her described at the end of the poem.
Is that what it was? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was it. Mrs. Vitt, the first to realize what a liar I was. A boy pretending to have read a book in second grade about a big black cat. I'd made it as far as the cover silhouette. The first to let us choose our spelling words, like telephone and information. Long pronounceable portions of the sky outside, words I ever after spelled correctly. The first to tell me I was a funny boy, or had a funny sense of the truth, or had no sense of it, but was funny anyway. Mrs. Vitt began to shake one day, lighting her cigarette in the teacher's lounge, or carrying coffee in her quaking hands. I was in high school then, but heard she'd quit and went to visit her in the old north end of town and met her thin, attentive husband strapping her to a board to hold her straight. She smiled at me, though her head shook to and fro. It took her husband many lighter flicks to catch her swaying cigarette. She looked like a knife thrower's trembling model. Mrs. Vitt, I blurted out, I'm sorry. She stared at me, but whether she was nodding or shaking, no, I couldn't tell. Sorry I lied so much. I must have given you a lot of grief. And she, with each word, shuddered out in smoke. No child I taught was any grief to me.
Wow.
True story.
I can't hear that poem enough, Davey. It's just, that's a great poem. What a great story. What a great
Well, and
last-
you show so much about yourself in this poem too.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you're not,
It's
you're not
beautiful, isn't
afraid.
it?
You're not afraid to show, you know,
Yes.
the unvarnished Davy.
Yes, Davey.
When I think about all the ways I've
The
been
lies.
a liar in my life, in
Yeah.
many different stages in my life,
Yeah.
it's pretty appalling. It's really something. Mark Twain's got nothing on me. Tom Sawyer's got nothing on me.
But that's what it is, Davey. We're all pretending.
Yeah.
We're all pretending. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what we have to learn, to stop pretending. When we've got the courage, we learn if we can stop pretending.
Well, and that's part of the great value of the poem, is that we
Yes.
can taste the honesty
Yeah.
in the voice of the speaker
Yeah.
here. But
Yeah.
I just want to say, because we touched on this earlier today, that it's possible for life to actually become the art. The setting in which she utters her final line could not be more. The fact that it happened is really extraordinary, because it deepens the impact of that line just so many ways. But the line itself has impact, even if she were saying it, you know, over a coffee in great good health.
Yeah.
So and the failure to light the cigarette. I mean, all of the halting. There's the
Yeah.
halting in the
Yeah.
speaker,
Yeah.
and then there's the physical halting in the character and in the setting, and so there's this meeting, you know, this meeting of compromised action that she cuts through with that line.
Yeah.
And
That's
the
so
fact
great.
that she's shuddering as she says it, you couldn't, it feels like you would have to make it up, but you didn't.
No, but That's a great way of putting it, Al, of compromised action. That's the setting is of compromised action. But shut it out in smoke. I see like the words forming
Yes.
like smoke signals, like
Yes.
letters in smoke. And that's just perfect for life, that evanescence of these lessons, that how they are there. And we have to keep relearning things because they're all just written in smoke.
Well, here's the thing. The setup, the action of the poem is vivid, the physical action, but the emotional action is just as vivid.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a real marrying of, and not every experiences are not all equally vivid.
Yeah. Yeah.
But this poem is like, it's just goes to 11, as Spinal Tap would say.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It's just so good.
Yeah, wow.
Just changing the language from the language of a child. It's like imitating the language of the child. First to say that I read a book about a big black cat, and it reminds me of something Heaney does in Death of a Naturalist, when the first part of that, he's actually, the diction and the tone is as if he is being that young boy again. And it's only as the complexity of the emotional response to the world grows that the diction gets more, and the syntax gets more complex. But I love the way you did that.
It was wonderful to hear you read it. What added, and you know what a great proponent I am of the reading of the poem, the performing of the poem, completing what for me is just the words on the page are like the sheet music that you have to bring to life as a musician. And so what you did, which, I mean, good readers, great readers all have an instinct for this, was as we got further into the poem and you got to this moment of a great confrontation, you adopted a kind of urgency in the way that you read the quoted lines. That was just really touching and compelling because it was so believable. It just so happens that the person who experienced this is telling us about it. But during those lines, you become your childhood self in that moment. And so I'm really glad that we've got it, and that people can come back and hear you read that if they ever want to. So thank you for that. Wow.
I should just throw out one other point that's not in the poem. It's behind the poem. The first poem I read was about my father giving me a lesson by calling me a patient guy.
Yes.
And I was learning something from that. This is actually a lesson my mother taught me. She insisted that we go visit my second grade teacher, who was ill with muscular dystrophy. My mother was teaching me without saying a word that this is what you do. You go see the people who helped you in your life, and you say to them what they meant to you in some way or another. So my mother taught by example many, many things, and that was one of them. And she was a problematic mother. I could whine about my mother till the cows come home, but I had basic lessons from her that I value to this day,
Well, it's a great lesson, but I have to ask you, did she encourage you in any way to adopt the confessional tone that you adopted, or did that come from you in the moment?
No.
And I don't mean that as a joke.
That was you.
That's just me trying to figure out how to tell the story.
But well, now wait a minute. I'm not going to let you off the hook. As a child, when you confront, I mean, in a way, you're confronting your fear.
My mother wasn't telling me to apologize to Mrs. Witt.
So this is a testament to your character.
Yes.
Okay.
It is.
That I hope you have no idea of being sorry about. This is what should happen.
Yeah.
When you see your second grade teacher in her compromised state, and it's your only chance to witness the truth of your life and hers as they've happened together. So this is you didn't shirk. You went right at it, and that's good for you. I mean, you and you were not a man yet, but you knew how to behave like one.
I was the man of the family in high school. I was the, no, really, my dad was gone, my older brother was gone, and I handled a lot of shit. So,
well, I'm making a comment about your character as a person. Quite. I mean, it happens to be on display because of your nature as a poet. But if you weren't that boy, this poem doesn't happen. So
exactly. Yeah. Exactly. You're absolutely right.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Wow. Great.